All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome everyone to another edition of That's Football. Sorry for the lateness, folks. It's been a technical difficulty, one thing after another, but we got everything set up here. We're about less than a week from a Super Bowl. We're also less than 2 weeks from the beginning of the 2023 XFL season. Guys, I can't wait for this to start again, and it's beginning the first full year of football.
Oh yeah, first full year of football. We got an exciting Super Bowl to talk about here, as well as some very noteworthy things happening in and around the XFL. And of course, first guest joining us here today, first time guest here on That's Football, works for Hub as well as USFL News Hub. Also an avid Philadelphia Eagles fan, so of course we got some questions for him related to the Super Bowl. Mr. Anthony Miller, how you doing today, sir?
I am great. Thanks for having me, Tony. Really
Uh,
appreciate it.
Hey, no problem at all, man. So again, a little bit later start than normal. We just hop right into it, man. So obviously, of course, your Eagles have made it to Super Bowl Sunday yet again.
Say big game, we don't want to get caught.
Oh yeah, sorry, NFL. Big game. They've made it to the big game yet again. Second time in 5 years now, and now second time under two different coaching staffs. How does this one, from your perspective, I guess, compare to the trip that you guys made in 2018?
It's different in the fact that 5 years ago, if there was a lot more adversity with the team than what they faced this year, and it's because of the multitude of injuries that we had 5 years ago,
Yep.
including losing Carson Wentz. So I think in terms of the injury part, that was something that ended up being this year is kind of similar towards the end of the year when Johnson got hurt, Hurts was hurt, Boston Maddox was hurt, but we were able to overcome it, and those guys were able to come back to the playoffs and be able to fight through it. And so the feel of this team is just so different. I think as long as I've been an Eagles fan, this is probably the best team that this franchise has ever seen. We're just offensive line, maybe the best offensive line they've ever had. Defensive line, it's turning out to be a historically great defensive line. It may end up being just as good, if not better, than the 1985 Chicago Bears defensive line. So this team feels like this is really the first time where I can say like this Eagles team is really complete. Where they're great passing the football, they're great running the football. Defensively, they can stop the pass, they can put pressure on the quarterback, they can stop the run. Special teams is solid. Like overall, I think the only weakness they may have is punting. I think Brett Kern's been kind of really up and down since he's taken over as the starting punter like a month or so ago. But overall, this team has very few weaknesses, and this may be the first Super Bowl that I've watched with the Eagles in it. And I'm confident that they can win this game.
Very, very exciting stuff, man. So, if you had to say what the Eagles' biggest advantage was coming into Super Bowl 57, what do you think that is that they have over the Chiefs right now?
I think it's their defensive line. I think what Brandon Graham, what Fletcher Cox, what that group has been able to do, Hassan Reddick, I think what that defensive line has been able to do to get pressure on the quarterback. I know the Eagles like the blitz here and there, but this is the one defensive line where I can say you probably don't need to blitz on Patrick Mahomes because that defensive line, that front four, is able to get it done themselves. I mean, when you have Ndamukong Suh as a backup on your defensive line, you know that's how good you guys are. So this defensive line, this may be the Super Bowl where I feel like Jonathan Gann, the defensive coordinator, is probably going to be a little more conservative on blitzing. Even though Patrick Mahomes is injured with that ankle injury, I feel like he's going to be a little more conservative because Mahomes is not going to be able to run around that much. So that's going to be an advantage for the Eagles to have that front four defensive line just put the pressure on Mahomes. And I think they can already do it themselves. They've proven time and time again that they will be able to do it this year. I mean, they're pacing to have the most sacks out of any team in a whole season, including postseason in NFL history. So I kind of see John Gann maybe a little more conservative, maybe drop back the linebackers, but that defensive line, that's a special group. That may be the strongest unit this team has.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw it, live and living color against the 49ers. Now, granted, it had some injuries of their own, but definitely Philly, took advantage of that in full strength. So, on the the opposite side of that, if there's any disadvantage that you would be concerned about at all going into this game for the Eagles, what would it be?
Disadvantage. I mean, Jalen Hurts is not 100%. That's just the reality of the situation. We've been really lucky in these playoffs that you've had guys like Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, especially Kenneth Gainwell. I don't think anyone has nearly talked about the postseason he's had. He had over 100 yards in the divisional round against the Giants. He had a strong NFC Championship appearance against the 49ers. With Miles Sanders. While Miles Sanders had a couple of rushing touchdowns, it was really Kenneth Gainwell that was getting the big chunk of yards. So I don't think enough's been talked about his performance, but with Jalen Hurts being injured with ribs, he's been a little more conservative. I think he's going to go all out, and I think he's going to throw his body on the line and probably do a lot more of the RPO style, keep the ball and actually run it more than he has, because we kind of saw the glimpse of him doing a little bit better against San Francisco. But I do wish he was a little more healthier. But with the running backs that we have, even with Boston Scott, I mean that backfield is so good. That offensive line is so good. Jason Kelce might go down as one of the greatest centers of all time. He's just really sneaky elusive when he's able to pull out at the center position and be a lead blocker for Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell. So it's an advantage to have that offensive line, but I don't know how much Jalen Hurts is going to be able to run the ball. So that may be a little bit of a disadvantage over what they have. But again, it's hard to find a disadvantage because this team is so complete.
Definitely a stacked roster. I mean, you mentioned the running backs and Sanders and Gainwell, not to mention all pro talents and A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, a wide receiver, Dallas Goedert, a hell of a tight end. So weapons all across the board. Now, with that said, a lot of the talk that I've seen this week has been about whether or not it's been a benefit or a disadvantage for the Eagles and not necessarily being tested as much in their recent games. Do you think that's about them not necessarily being tested, or them just being so far better than everybody else that it's kind of a moot point at that point?
Well, I mean, so I kind of have to fight back a little bit on it. I think they were really tested against San Francisco for the first half. I mean, think about it was almost a little over 2 minutes before the 2-minute warning in the second quarter. It was a 7-7 tie. Yeah. And I know the injury to Brock Purdy hurt. I understand that. But the 49ers were in that game for a little bit. The problem was the 49ers just had they literally got 4 penalties on those last 2 drives before halftime. And that's what led to the Eagles taking the 21-7 lead. Yes, Josh Johnson's fumble did not help with under 2 minutes left in the second quarter, but it was all those penalties where the 49ers had the Eagles stopped. It was just the defense was committing so many penalties that they really hurt themselves. So they, at the end of the day, I understand with the injury and that it was, the 49ers were in it. So I'm kind of tired of the excuses. The 49ers had a chance to stay in that game. I don't know if they would have won it still, but if they didn't have those penalties, that would have been a much closer game and a much lower scoring game. Yeah. But, I mean, in terms of, I just feel like the Eagles now against not tested. The Giants and I think that just comes with inexperience. That was a bigger game for them. They're a young team. They'll be back in it, and Brian Dable's going to have that team competitive for a long time, which is something I didn't expect from the Giants, just how they played the last few years. But in terms of that NFC Championship game, the Eagles really didn't play that well offensively. I mean, let's think about it. Jalen Hurts did not throw the ball that great. He wasn't really effective. The running game had some spurts, but that offense wasn't spectacular. It did help that we had the injuries to the quarterback positions, but the 49ers were in it for a good portion. It's just penalties that were killing them.
Well, and also to your point, I think if I remember correctly, they scored on their very first drive of the game, and then their very last drive of the second half, and everything in between was pretty much 3 and outs or something similar. So, no, definitely good point there. Now, if you had to kind of look ahead a little bit for this Eagles team, do you think this is a run that they can sustain? Obviously, they have Jalen Hurts on a very team-friendly deal, having him as a second-round pick. I believe Miles Sanders is at the end of his contract. going into free agency, but obviously you have guys like Kenny Gainwell there. Is this a team that you see being an NFC powerhouse for the next 4 or 5 years to come?
This is going to be a team that's going to be competitive. I don't know how many Super Bowls they're going to win. I'm not 100% confident. It's very hard to repeat as Super Bowl champs in this league. And especially, like you said, Miles Sanders, I want him to come back. I doubt he will come back just because of how well Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott have played, and they're probably going to draft another running back. But then you look at Jason Kelsey, you look at Brandon Graham. These are guys that are probably on the edge of retirement. Even Fletcher Cox, I know he's in his early 30s, but he's probably contemplating retirement as well. So there's a chance this Eagles team is going to take a huge hit on that defensive line. They have a lot of guys that are just on one-year contracts that they're probably going to end up losing. So while I think the Eagles are going to be competitive in the NFC, they'll be one of the top teams. I don't know if Super Bowls are going to be in the future, at least next year, because they may have to do a little bit of retooling a bit, and they're going to have to prepare for the fact that they're probably going to have to pay Jalen Hurts $40 to $45 million a year if he keeps going this route. Now, they have to be a little bit careful. Last time they paid for a franchise quarterback, it didn't really go well. So they kind of have. I hope they're a little more patient this time around, kind of see how he does in the next year or two, and then go ahead and stuff.
Yeah, because I do know that a few days ago, Jerry Jones makes some remarks because he's saying that the Eagles and the Rams can kind of go with this all-in mentality, but I don't see your Eagles deconstructing how the Rams were this year. I just don't see that.
Yeah, if you look at the Eagles' whole offense, all their starters, they're all drafted by the Eagles except for A.J. Brown. Everybody else was drafted by the Eagles. So they built this team. Yes, the defense a little bit has been reconstructed. That offense is pretty much all homegrown except for A.J. Brown. Everyone else was drafted by the Eagles.
Yeah, that's good too. And just with an early conversation, just I told Anthony that St. Louis is actually not part of Chiefs Kingdom.
So you have to kind of, for people who are not from St. Louis or not even from the state of Missouri, you have to kind of think of St. Louis as Kansas and Kansas City the same way you do Dallas and Houston. They're neighbors, yes,
Pittsburgh
but
and Philadelphia. That might be a better
not quite as friendly as you probably think it is for it to be two cities within the same.
And locally, like it was for 5 years ago, we were glad when Chris Long got his second Super Bowl ring after the painful years when he was here, and we're rooting for another guy's trade.
So I will say their offense is going to be a lot more balanced than they were in 2020. They had help on these offensive coordinators, so they ran going up their great offense that was all about passing the football, and they're running backs being more versatile in the passing game. It's going to be a different look this time around, especially with the Battlehawks' old coach Jonathan Hayes running the offense now. I think they'll still be. They did a lot of spread during the open practice, which I had taken a week or so ago. But I saw a lot more of the running game, so especially when you have running backs like Devion Smith, you have Keith Ford, you have Kenneth Farrell. Those are guys that are going to probably get a lot more carries. And what I really noticed with actually Keith Ford, who was the number 3 back for the Battlehawks just 3 years ago, he got the majority of the carries. So I think it may be him and Devion Smith who get the majority of the carries on that offense. That was something that was kind of surprising for me to watch. So, this Renegades team is going to be a lot more balanced than they were 3 years ago. I will say defensively, this team is stacked, especially in the secondary with guys like Josh Hawkins, Will Hill, Trayvon LeBlanc. This secondary has a ton of talent, and I think they may be the deepest secondary in the XFL. And I think overall, defensively, they have such a great unit over there. So I'm really looking forward to watching the Renegades defense more than the offense, because I think that defense has the potential to be top notch.
Yeah, I'll get this old lame joke out of the way, because basically people are saying the Orange Renegades are like the 2020 version of the Battlehawks with the 27 players. But I'll just say this. Hopefully, when it comes to the running plays, just let John Hayes calling, "Don't let Chuck Long touch the playbook." Just FYI. Like, I know there was a little bit of a code thing there, but I'm like, no, don't do that. Of course, one of the biggest targets for the offense, of course, is since they were part of the New Orleans Breakers with your
And South Carolina, is that probably one combination we'll probably see a lot with the Renegades offense this year? Yeah,
South is a top target. Another one is probably Jordan Smallwood. Sorry, from he was on the LA Wildcats back in 2020. He went to school at Oklahoma. He has that relationship with Fox News. Jordan Smallwood looked really good in practice. He had a nice long touchdown catch there. I expect him to be the number one receiver on that team with South Carolina. Juwan Willingham, I thought, had a really nice practice as well. Tyler Vaughns looked good. There's a couple of receivers that look really solid. It was one of the biggest question marks on the team is how's the receiving corps going to look when you have guys like South Carolina, Jordan Smallwood. It's a pretty solid unit, so it'll be interesting. I'd be interested to see who really steps up. Those are the two main targets.
Yeah, and what is the difference have you seen with the fan base now in Arlington? Well, formerly it was Dallas, now it's Arlington this time. Like, I do know that quite shortly after this week, there was a big bump with the home opener ticket sales, which is good. How was the fan fest there last week before, of course, that ice storm that you got had last week?
Yeah, so it was a positive experience. I was telling some of the representatives with the Arlington Renegades that it was kind of a smoother open practice than what it was 3 years ago. I thought it was a really good turnout. I think fans are a little more excited, or there's a little more optimism, and I think a big reason for that is the structure of this roster is a lot better than what it was 3 years ago. I think there were high expectations 3 years ago, but I think it was just players maybe put it in the wrong system. It feels like Bob Stoops has taken more control of what he wants out of the system. He wanted to be more balanced offensively. He wanted to have a deeper quarterback room than what he had 3 years ago. I think that was one comment he made was that he feels way more comfortable with his quarterback room just because, 3 years ago, Landry Jones got injured on the very first day of training camp and had to resort to Philip Nelson. This time around, he's got 3 really solid quarterbacks in Kyle Sloter, Drew Plitt, and Kevin Anderson that either one of those 3 could really step in and be the starter. So I think he's a little more comfortable in what he has. I think he's just a little more familiar, a little more comfortable with how he's building his team from what he did 3 years ago. So I think he took that experience and was able to structure the roster how he wants to. So the coaching staff is solid. All 3 phases of the team are solid. This team is stacking up to be one of the best in the league.
Yeah, and speaking with the lame joke with the 2020 boxing, because similarly, Arlington actually has a draft-eligible player this time around too as well. Willie Taylor III, linebacker.
Yes. Yeah.
What have you seen from him? Because I know there was a similar experience, of course, now with Kay Robinson, now who's still part of the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, so I saw him part of the rotation. He looked really good. I think that linebacker pool is going to run Wallace Taylor, Wallace Donald Payne, Temple, Ryan Bullard. That's a really deep group. So I don't specifically know if Taylor's going to end up starting, but it seems like he's going to be part of that rotation of really good linebackers. So I really like what defense coordinators Tim Lewis and Jake Hayes have put together with that unit. So it may be a mix of those linebackers kind of mixing in and out of the lineup, but all the linebackers together are really solid.
Now, I guess outside of anybody that you've already named, is there any one particular Renegades player from that open practice that stood out more than the rest of the roster?
I will say that Devontae Busby, the quarterback for the Renegades, I thought he had a really solid practice. He had a couple of really good pass breakups in the secondary, so I thought he looked really good. And I'm going to talk on a couple of former Battlehawks, Taylor Rosalino and Marquette King. They both looked fantastic in practice. Rosalino didn't miss a single kick. Marquette King was bombing at 50-plus yards down the field. And those were 2 guys that were probably the top ones in their positions with the XFL back in 2020. they look like they haven't missed a step at all. So it gives me full confidence with those two guys that that's a really strong special teams and looks like poised to be the best in the league.
Now, any early predictions at all for the Renegades? Obviously, very early. We haven't seen them play a game yet, but you mentioned having the look of one of the teams that could be best in the league. Any predictions at all on the 10-game record for them?
I can see them. I see them getting a winning record. I'm trying not to. Like 3 years ago, I was like, oh, they're going to be 7-3. They're going to win the title, and then it looked like they were not heading in that direction. This time around, I'm a little more confident, saying I think this is a team that probably finishes around 8-2, and will probably make the playoffs. And they should be one of the favorites to win the title. It's really going to depend on two things: the quarterback position and the wide receivers. I think everything else, everyone's pretty comfortable with how the team is stacked and they're doing good, but it's really about, is Kyle Siller going to end up being the starting quarterback, and what are the wide receivers going to do outside of Sal Cannella and George Smallwood?
And of course, now, what do you think is probably the biggest rivalry within the South Division, or mostly the Texas Division? But what is probably the the most out of the divisional opponents that might cause the Renegades more of a problem?
I mean, it has to be obviously either the Roughnecks or the Brahmas. I think they both will definitely. That's going to be a really nice rivalry that they can build out over the next few years is between those three teams. Obviously, I think there's going to be a little more connection with the Roughnecks just because of them playing against each other 3 years ago, and that game that they played in Arlington ended up being one of the best games of the season. I think it's going to be very similar, especially when you have Bob Stoops and Wade Phillips, who are probably the most tenured, most experienced coaches heading into this league. Those two, with their great football minds and IQs, are going to have that's going to be more of a chess match than like who's the better player. I think it can end up being who's going to be more strategic and how they approach the game plan. Is it going to be Bob Stoops or is it going to be Wade Phillips, with Stoops having more of a college background, Wade Phillips more of an NFL background? It'll be really interesting to see their minds clash together in those games.
Yeah. One thing, now we'll move over to the USFL. They just announced their schedule now. And of course, this year, instead of playing in Birmingham, the Gamblers will be in the hub with the Memphis Showboats, I believe. Yeah, that's right. Birmingham and New Orleans are together. And of course, greatly with the Gamblers, they have their head coach back with Kevin Sumlin, Texas A&M, and I guess, I don't know, I've double checked with the schedule here. It looks like there might be a sneak peek because the broadcast schedule hasn't been announced quite yet. But it looks like, according to this on the Fox Sports website I'm looking now, the first game against the Panthers will actually be on NBC at 11 a.m., so that's good to know. So, thank you for the cheat. A little bit of the cheat there, Fox Sports. So, what's probably the thing to continue on with Sumlin with the Gamblers this time around in order to take control of the South? Because I know that's, of course, go against defending the Birmingham Stallions.
Yeah, in all my years of covering different football teams, I've never seen a weirder team than the Houston Gamblers. This was a team that literally could have finished last year at 7-3, but they ended up finishing 3-7 because there was 4 games where they literally lost at the last minute of each game.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it. I think what's interesting about this Gamblers team is how are they going to handle their defense. They've lost multiple players, including Chris Odom, who went to the NFL, Donald Payne's in the XFL. They've lost Will Likely. They lost Reggie Northrup, and then they lost their defensive coordinator, Ken Lewis. So I'm really interested to see how they restructured that defense. Offensively, they got a lot of their returning starters back. Kenji Baha is probably going to be the starting quarterback of the team, and he brings an interesting dynamic with his mobility, and he got better and better through those last 3 games of the year. So I think he could be a guy that can develop with the Houston Gamblers. Another strong suit is their running game. Mark Thompson, first half of the season, was the best running back in the USFL and kind of dropped off the last 5 games of the year. So I'll be interested to see how he bounces back and see if he can get back to top form. Majority of the receivers are back outside of Isaiah Zuber, who went to the NFL. So I think the offense could end up being a little more of a strength to this Houston team than what it was last year. Because last year was all about how good the defense was. This year it might be the offense. So I'd be more interested to see how how much growth that offense comes up, I still have some concerns about the Gamblers' overall roster. But if that defense can find a way to fill those holes and that offense can kind of figure themselves out running the ball, Houston could be a solid team. They could be mid-major 5-5, 6-4 record.
Yeah, and of course now with the plan with USFL, as I said before on the show, is that first year they were in one hub. This year they got, technically it's still 3, but they got 4 hubs. Just the 4th one, the Ohio one, none of them is actually the markets that are playing there, but they did well with the playoffs, so that's why they did that with the Pittsburgh Ballers and it's the Generals, right? Like for some reason it goes flip-flop with the new Detroit hub with Michigan Panthers and the Stars. So, like, for the 3rd year to get in the market, and of course now they would compete with the Houston Roughnecks, And do you think they can't play at the University of Houston? More likely, they probably would try to go play at Rice University, don't you think?
I would assume so, but I'm going to be really fascinated to see how that turns out next year, just because, like you said, the USFL is kind of taking more of a hub approach to it, which I'm not going to knock on because a lot of the problems with the alternative football league is the finance of it, and financially the USFL is taking a much slower approach to it. They're trying to be more television product than actually like connecting with the community. The XFL is a little more about finding that balance between having a hub city and connecting with the community. I just don't know if the Gamblers are going to have the fan base that the Roughnecks have, because the Roughnecks are playing in Houston. So I feel like those fans are going to be more connected with them than the Gamblers. So I assume they're going to have to play at different stadiums. There's no way that they could play at the same one unless they work something out of the schedule where the Gamblers are on the road, first 2-3 weeks of the season, since technically the USFL and XFL are going to overlap in April. But I think it would be smarter to play at another stadium like Rice Stadium, or play somewhere else that doesn't interfere with the XFL.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned, not for the Houston Gamblers, but remember we did have the Tampa Bay Bandits, then go to become the Memphis Showboats, and then on the Twitter, on the Bandit, it says we're in hiatus for 1 year, so that's like, So are they planning there? Because I know that the USFL, through all the stuff during the Alter Football Committee that we did, like Reed found like the trademarks for like the, of course, the Oakland Invaders, but we'll see how that goes because Oakland has a lot of work to do before they can do anything in there. That part, because they have to get that A situation. I know they're trying to get a WNBA team. It just that I just hope, because I hope the USFL is successful. I just hope they don't do what they did with just moving teams and changing the brand like that, because that can hurt a little bit. But we'll see what happens. I'm hoping for the best, and of course now the Gamblers are closer to us because Memphis is actually the closest market out to St. Louis, and it's not that far of a drive. It's only like 2 or 3 hours. Yeah, so
I think for the USFL, I hope it works out too. I think it's just better for the sport of football if you can see the USFL and the XFL succeed. So I hope they find a way to make it work. But yeah, I'd be interested to see if the Houston Gamblers are actually going to go to Houston next year, or if that would be a similar situation where they move them to another market because they know they're not going to be able to compete with the XFL.
I will say it will be an interesting experiment to see how that goes in the Houston market with 2 teams playing similar times but at different rates, because that's just something to see, just like, let's see what happens here.
Which team can draw in more effects, right?
Well, it's Texas, man. It doesn't really matter in my opinion. So it's just how it goes, because bring it back to of course, we'll probably have you back on during the course. Will be the Battlehawks home opener on week 4, and there's going to be a lot of storylines with that one. With all the familiar, John Hayes comes back, and a lot of the foreign players. Of course, Brian Folkert, who is a local player here, is on the Renegades right now. That's going to be an interesting atmosphere just overall, and hopefully that goes well here in about 4 weeks. What is something you probably would like to see as a whole for the XFL as they increase in a few weeks, just to increase like fan engagement and so on?
Yeah, I'd be interested to see the attendance. What I would like to see is just more consistency with attendance. So I would, especially bigger cities like St. Louis, San Antonio, Seattle, I hope that they all can stay over 20,000 plus fans a game. I think that's a really important aspect to this league. I think ratings should be solid, but I think the big focal point for the XFL this year is making sure they have consistent attendance. So, for example, for Arlington, I'd love to see it around 15 to 17,000 fans a game. Vegas will be a little bit tougher to just because it's only a 12,000 seats stadium, but if each of these teams can finish over 10,000 plus fans for each game, I think that ends up being a massive accomplishment compared to the USFL that was lucky to get a couple hundred people for most of their games outside of Birmingham Stallions. So I think the goal for the XFL this year, and what I want to see, is just high attendance numbers, because that will showcase whether the XFL is being successful in their approach, or did the USFL go the right route and take their time before getting into the actual communities of their teams.
Yeah, one thing I hope for, we'll see, I don't know, might be till year 3. Do you think next year, after they get season, that
hasn't happened since '01, unfortunately. Do you think they probably will try to get into the markets more, like maybe get a training facility or more of a, actually have a more of a community presence after this year? That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, and yeah, a lot of it again is going to depend on what they do financially. If they end up doing very well in attendance and they make good enough revenue off the game days, then hopefully they will take the route in getting their players and coaches and their staff to those communities. Because that's what really helped the XFL back in 2020. They did such a good job of doing like meet the team events and having the coaches and players connect with the fans, which they've done a decent job of now, but there was a lot more of it in 2020 because they were actually in those cities.
Yeah, I do remember seeing one of the Arlington social media videos of the fans running on the flag in the field. I think I know the guy that ran the flag on the field that had the Renegades tattoo on the back of his calf, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Now, the one thing going back to the USFL, of course, they haven't announced their broadcast schedule yet. We already know that all the games will be either on FX, ABC, either ESPN station. Then all games are able to stream all on ESPN Plus. Last year, the USFL, it was a whole mixture of things. Some were on USA, some were on Fox. We'll see if they do that simulcast with NBC and Fox again. But then there were some Peacock exclusive games, and some people just, and that was not all the games. That was only like a few there than the NBC broadcast one. What do you think of, like, do you think there'll probably be any Peacock exclusive games again this season?
I mean, probably. I think a lot of these leagues are trying to get more streaming. I think what the USFL should do, though, is make it available for cable as well, but maybe do like an alternative broadcast version on Peacock. I know, like, with Amazon Prime, with what they've done with the NFL, and there are different broadcast views, especially using that next-gen stats view to watch the games. That was how I watched all my NFL games on Amazon Prime, because I was just fascinated to see all the stats. That's something that I think NBC should take advantage of and see if they can utilize it for the USFL. So I hope they can do that on their end. I hope the XFL will do the same with the, maybe something like ESPN Plus. Maybe do alternative versions of the broadcast, because I think it will bring a different perspective to, the XFL has been all about trying to change the way they're, media-wise, how these sports leagues are doing it. So I would hope they would utilize ESPN Plus and try to give an alternative version. But if they're just going to do like exclusive, if the USFL is going to do exclusive Peacock, I don't see the success being there unless they're doing something completely different that no other broadcast has ever done for football.
Yeah, just one more thing, because this is a question I'll ask Mike too, because I noticed this, because XFL, Disney bought the rights. They've advertised on all the games, especially on the Pro Bowl, which I was shocked got 70 million viewers overall. That's surprising for how the Pro Bowl games have now become. And then, of course, there's definitely going to be a USFL commercial on the Super Bowl. Fox is broadcasting it. That's the most obvious thing. NBC, though, had the playoff games and all the games there, and they paid for the media rights for the USFL, yet they didn't do any advertising for it. And I've talked to a few people in the US, and they just throw their hands up. It's like, Why are they not advertising since they're broadcasting and paying money for it?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, this is Fox's baby. They're the ones that bought the USFL. They're putting their money into it. NBC is just a broadcast partner. They don't have as much incentive into it as Fox does. So it doesn't surprise me how much Fox is putting their efforts into the USFL. NBC, I know sometimes they do a little ticker at the bottom, promoting the USFL, but at the end of the day, this is Fox's baby. They want this to succeed as a television product, so they're going to do a lot more work with it than NBC would be.
Yeah, it's just surprising because remember, they lost hockey to Disney. And then I think, isn't the only other event after football, like it's probably like tennis and then Premier, and then I know they're big on Kentucky Derby, but I can't really recall most of the other sports they have that's unexclusive for Peacock.
Yeah, nothing exclusive for Peacock. They probably will do some like golf, but limited audience there anyway, right? So, but no, Anthony, this was great, man. We definitely appreciate you taking some time to come on. Best of luck for your rooting interest here come Sunday, and I'm sure we'll be connecting with you again here to talk Renegades and some XFL and USFL in the coming weeks. Let the folks out there who are watching, let them know where they can find your work on social media and on the websites.
Yeah, so you can go on Twitter by Anthony Miller if you want to check out my articles. You can go to xflnewshub.com to not only check out mine, but everyone's work that they're doing there, as well as you can go on USFLnewshub.com to check out the work I'm doing for the gamblers there as well.
All right, man. Well, definitely a pleasure having you. We'll be in touch again here soon.
And good
Thanks,
luck.
gentlemen. I
And,
appreciate it.
and we're definitely rooting for your Eagles to win this Sunday.
Much appreciated.
And hopefully Robert Quinn gets that ring. Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was Mr. Anthony Miller joining us here for the first time on Nats Football. Of course, crazy Super Bowl week now. Before we kind of dive back into Super Bowl, before Mike Mitchell comes on and joins us again.
Hold on just a moment. I'm trying to get that. See you, Anthony. Thank you. All right.
So before Mike Mitchell comes and joins us again, of course, wanted to make a quick note. Super Bowl, I know we've been kind of talking about, or big game, wanted to talk about injury report and everything leading up to it as well. Weirdly enough, no players listed with injury designations for the Philadelphia Eagles. Sensing some gamesmanship there, especially knowing we know about Jalen Hurts' injury and that shoulder that he had coming into the playoffs. So no players with injury designations for Philly. On the opposite end of that, we've got KC. McCole Hartman was placed on IR with a pelvis injury, so unfortunately he will not be able to play in the Super Bowl. And then, of course, Clyde Edwards-Helaire activated off of IR in his place. So we will get Mike Mitchell joining us here in just a second. For those of y'all who are just joining the show, of course, this is another episode of That's Football. We've got special guest Mike Mitchell joining us once again. He's all over the place. Jet Press, writer, contributor at Fansided, CFL News Hub, XFL News Hub, USFL News Hub. Anything football you can pretty much know Mike has his hands in it. Mike, how you doing today, man?
Mike, can you hear us? Hold on.
Maybe not.
He says it's on companion mode. Hold on. Give me just a moment here. All right. Hold on. All right. Hey, Mike, can you hear us? It says you're on companion mode.
I don't think you can hear us. So.
Camera's on. My phone is on, or let's see. The thing is, I just don't know what companion mode is. I have, yes. I said, can you hear us? Scene. We'll see if he might have to call us or something. All right. It says you are on. see. The mic is on. Hold on. It says, how does he get out? Log out and come back in. Okay, he's going to re-enter here. I never heard. Does anyone? I never knew Google Meet had something called companion mode. He's
Never
going
knew
to
that.
re-enter here, so.
I guess as we wait on Mike, finish out KC's injury report for Sunday's game. Willie Gay, linebacker, listed as questionable with a shoulder injury, but expected to play. And wide receivers, Kadarius Toney and Juju Smith-Schuster, both listed with knee injuries, but also expected to play.
All right. Can you
hear us now, Mike?
I don't. We can't hear you. Are you sure? Thumbs up if you can hear us. We can't hear you. Hold on. Still nothing.
No?
There
there
we
we
go.
go.
All right. Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What?
There we go.
Now the audio is now gone from you again. Technology, folks.
Yeah, bear with us, folks. Sorry about this.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Can you hear us?
Maybe.
Wait. Yep. Hold on.
I can't hear you guys right now.
Dear Lord. Okay. Yeah, he can't hear us. Okay.
Battlehawks already have a third quarterback today.
Oh.
Ooh.
Yeah. Hold on. Maybe we should have him call in on that phone again, or.
That might be our best bet if he can't hear us.
Yeah. Hold on.
Fortunately.
Yeah. Let me find that dang number I gave him a few weeks back.
It was all the way up.
Yeah, hold on here. 4 339 9759. There we go. Yeah. All right. All right, he gave me the thumbs up here. Flip, flop, flip, flop.
Right.
All right, here we go. All right, hold on here. Hold on just a moment here. Get that back in here. There we go. Hey, can you hear us now?
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hold on. We need to mute the mic on now on you on the video board. Now we can hear you.
Yeah. You good now?
Okay. That's good. That's good to know. It seems like every time we hook up, there's an issue, usually on my end. So sorry, guys.
Yeah, hold on. Now we're here getting an echo from you here. Mute your mic on the Google Meet there.
Okay, how we doing now?
There we go.
Perfect. There we go.
All right. Welcome back, Mike Mitchell. Of course, XFL News Hub writer for the DC Defenders, the New Jersey Generals for the USFL, Toronto Argos for CFL, and also part of the Jets Press as well on, why am I forgetting the website for some reason?
It's the jetpress.com.
Jetpress.com.
There we go.
Yeah. Been a technological problem here this evening. Of course, you know the last time we had you on, your laptop crashed.
Oh, that was a tough transition for me. So it is what it is. But
I will
you
say
know,
your camera looks really good compared to last time you were on here that I'm seeing on the video board.
oh yeah. So I have to join the current century at some point. So here we are.
There we go. There we go. Well, of course, before we dive into the world of alternative football, of course, we have to ask about your New York Jets. Had some shakeup this offseason so far. Letting go Mike LaFleur, offensive coordinator, who's now in the same role with the Los Angeles Rams, to bring in Nathaniel Hackett, of course, infamous 1 year head coaching tenure there in Denver, going back to the offensive coordinator role that he was in Green Bay, now for the New York Jets. One, I guess, what do you think of the hire? And two, I guess, what do you think that means for the Jets' offense and most specifically their quarterback room moving forward?
There's so much uncertainty surrounding the Jets. I lived the Paul Hackett era, who is Nathaniel's father. He used to be the Jets offensive coordinator during the Herman Edwards years, Curtis Martin years. Yeah, it's a tough situation with the Jets because Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas are in a challenging spot because even though they're under contract for a few more years, 2023 is a big year for them. If they're not in contention or making the playoffs, there's a good chance that Woody Johnson, who did not hire this year, came on board after he was ambassador to UK. There's a good chance that he might pull the plug and start over. That's unfortunate for Jets fans because we've been down this road before. Of restarting, tearing things down. And it's not so much that Joe Douglas hasn't done a good job. You look at some of the draft picks he had recently. Obviously, Sauce Gardner's tremendous. Garrett Wilson had a tremendous year. So there have been some very good draft selections. He's done a good job with that. Robert Saleh is extremely likable. And the jury's still out on him. But there's no question that he's a great CEO for the franchise. The players love him. So I have no doubt he's a good coach. But until you get the quarterback position right, you're in nowhere land. So, that's been the biggest issue for the New York Jets. And right now, there's so much uncertainty as to who they'll reel in at the quarterback position. Because last year, their defense was so good that had they had mediocre or above average quarterback play, they might have been a playoff team. It's amazing that they won 7 games considering how poor they were at quarterback. And that's, the way it worked out with Mike LaFleur is interesting. It's couple of years ago, the thought was, him and Robert Saleh are extremely close. They're lifelong friends, and Matt LaFleur is Robert Saleh's best man, or the other way around. So, those guys are very close. So it got to the point now where after 2 years, they had to part ways, and I think the owner had something to do with that. Jets' struggles on offense had something to do with that. Elijah Moore, a lot of players griping about Mike LaFleur's offensive scheme. Zach Wilson bombing as a quarterback for the Jets is not a good mark on LaFleur. So I thought when LaFleur joined the Jets that within a couple of years, he's a young, bright enough assistant that he'd be the next head coach hired around the league. And he did depart the Jets, just not in the way you expected, or at least I expected. It just fell apart for the Jets offensively. They're starting over. The problem is, with someone like Nathaniel Hackett, who actually does have a very good resume as far as being an offensive coordinator and an assistant coach in the league. So it's not a bad hire from that standpoint. But when you have a situation where there were 12 offensive coordinator openings in the NFL, you can't pick and choose the guys you really desire because a lot of candidates are not going to pick your team because they don't know within a year if Robert Saleh is going to be fired and that they're going to start over and look for another job. So it's a tough spot that Nathaniel Hackett's coming in. Can the Jets get an Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, an ultimate pipe dream of Lamar Jackson? It looks like maybe he'll stay in Baltimore. Who are they going to end up with at quarterback? I think they want to go the veteran route, and I don't think they want to develop another young quarterback. So right now they're in a position where it's going to be difficult for them to challenge for anything in the AFC until they get that quarterback position squared away. And all these fancy veteran names, which are great, the thing of it all is that with the Jets nation, Jets fans, the one thing you always have in your head is don't get your hopes up. So until I actually see an Aaron Rodgers in a Jets uniform or Derek Carr or someone of that ilk, I'll believe it when I see it. As far as that goes, until they get that situation squared away, get competent play at the quarterback position, they're not going to be a contender.
Gotcha. Yeah, so of course you mentioned wanting to go the veteran route. I guess from a front office and draft standpoint, what does that mean for the rest of the moves that they plan to make for this offseason?
The big thing with it is like, for better or for worse, Joe Douglas he's done a good job with drafting, but when you botch the quarterback spot, you are likely not going to get a second chance to get a Anthony Richardson or somebody like that, trade up and make a big splash and go after a top quarterback in this year's upcoming draft class. So, they're kind of hitching their wagons to like a quick fix. You don't want to bring in a veteran that's only going to be here for a year or two. You want to actually get a veteran who you feel is going to stabilize your franchise for the next 3 to 5 years, because they built a good enough roster where if they can get the quarterback position squared away, they should be a decent football team as a contender. It's been a long time since the Jets have been an actual playoff team. They have the longest drought in the NFL. So, I don't think they're going to get an opportunity. I don't think the Jets are going to get an opportunity to draft another quote-unquote franchise quarterback. So they're going to have to find a veteran that makes it work. And this is a huge year coming up for the entire Jets organization, because they might have, if things fall apart, Nathaniel Hackett might be one and done, and Saleh and the entire crew could be gone. So pivotal year coming up for the Jets.
Yeah. Well, to pivot away from the Jets and I guess to stay in the NFL, of course, big game on Sunday, Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles. From the football you've watched this year, I guess, what are you most excited about for this game?
With the Chiefs, I'm wondering about the Chiefs because they limped their way into the Super Bowl. Now, they're a very good football team. I respect what Andy Reid has done. I'm a huge fan of Patrick Mahomes. I can't believe there's people out there that actually criticize him as a football player. He's special. But he's obviously not at 100%. They have injuries at the receiver position. They really needed the bye week. So maybe that'll help to an extent there. I think the Eagles are the best overall team in football. They can run the ball, pass the ball. They're very good on defense. They get after the quarterback. They have maybe the best trio of corners in the league, led by Big Play Slade there at corner. So the Eagles, to me, I would favor the Eagles in the game. If I know that Mahomes is healthy, then you give them a puncher's chance to win the whole thing. It wouldn't shock me if the Chiefs won. But I saw some things in the Bengals game where they just barely squeaked by. That's a testament to Mahomes and Andy Reid. But they had so many receivers go down to injury in that game, and Mahomes was hurt himself. The special thing about Patrick Mahomes is his ability to make plays after the play. Because what happens with teams that play the Chiefs is, sure, they come up with a good game plan to stop their play calls. But the best part of the Chiefs is that after the play doesn't work, Mahomes makes it work because his field vision, ability to throw from different angles, to improvise, just like a point guard out there. So Mahomes will be interesting to watch, and Jalen Hurts. That's an excellent quarterback matchup. I love both players, so I think it'll be good. But I think the Eagles are going to win because I think they have the better overall team.
Gotcha. Well, I guess also kind of looking ahead to the offseason a little bit further, if you had to predict or make one kind of wild prediction, whether it's the Jets or any other team for that matter for this offseason, what would you say that it is?
Desperation. I would say, desperation is a big thing in the NFL. So I think the Jets, because they've had the longest playoff drought, if for whatever reason they don't end up getting a Rodgers or a Carr and they lose out on those types of players, I can completely see them trying to go all in on a quarterback. I don't know if it's a Justin Fields or whomever that may be, a Lamar Jackson, but I can see them giving up serious draft capital. So that would be my prediction there. I think the Jets are desperate. So I think sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures. So if for whatever reason, let's just say Aaron Rodgers ends up with Las Vegas and Carr ends up with the Saints, and the Jets are left staring at, not adding a veteran quarterback that way, they might go all in and be ultra aggressive to get a quarterback, because that's the only way they're going to turn around the misfortunes of their franchise. So if I'm going to make a bold prediction, that the Jets are gonna trade serious draft capital to either A, move up to the top of the board in the NFL draft and get a quarterback, but more likely go all in on a better quarterback that people are not expecting. Not named Lamar Jackson. That would be the team I would call. I would call the Ravens up and say, well, okay, so how many first round picks do you want? 3, 4, 5? How are we going to make this work?
Yeah, just look. Hey, any pick I have, just take it. Please take it.
Yeah, just take it all.
If
Just
that
take it
means I
all.
walk
'Cause
away
I
with
think
Lamar
they
Jackson, you can
built
have it
a
all.
strong enough roster where if they were to somehow get a superstar quarterback, I really think they'd be a legitimate contender. I don't think they were that far away. I know they finished with 7 wins last year. There was a point where they were like 7-5, whatever the hell it was. But I think these teams that are desperate, I think the Jets are very desperate. I mean, your bold prediction could be, it sounds like the Bears are going to stick with Justin Fields, even though Justin Fields is a fantastic athlete and almost broke the rushing record for the quarterback. Problem with him is, and this has nothing to do with toughness, inability to stay healthy. The poor guy's in the medical tent like every 5 plays. So, I mean, and he took a beating. Now, that's on the Bears to get better talent around him, do a better job with the offensive line and all that. But, the Bears are saying right now they're going to keep Justin Fields. But I think a team like the Jets might give him a call. They probably, looking back now in hindsight, Jets should have taken Justin Fields instead of Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I think that's going to be hard pill to swallow as far as admitting defeat on that one. But I guess before we kind of move on into alternative football, of course, there's also Jimmy Garoppolo, who will kind of be floating around out there. Was obviously part of a team that went to the Super Bowl while Robert Saleh was still the defensive coordinator and Jimmy was starting for San Fran. Is that maybe kind of a solid plan B in your mind, or is that maybe a little lower on that quarterback totem pole than the Jets would like to go?
No, I like Jimmy G. I think that would be a solid pickup for sure. It's an upgrade over what the Jets have. The thing I wonder about with San Fran is, they have Trey Lance coming off an injury. Brock Purdy, unfortunately, got injured in the NFC Championship game. And so there's a little bit of uncertainty of his readiness and all that. We'll see. Maybe he'll be all right for the start of the season. But could the Niners run it back with Jimmy? And Jimmy's going to have more suitors. Like, as these quarterbacks fly off, Carr could be a quick decision. It could be with a couple of weeks now, finding out where Derek Carr's going. We'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. I have a feeling the Packers want to move on to Jordan Love. So Jimmy G could have several suitors out there. And, yeah, he would be someone to pivot to if you're the Jets and consider for sure. It's a question of what the Niners want to do, what Garoppolo wants to do. If Mike LaFleur, was still with the Jets, Jimmy G seemed like a natural setup there because, LaFleur is from the Niners. Garoppolo knows the system. But now that Hackett's in play, the Jets are still running a West Coast offense, so that could be a fit for Jimmy G. But I don't know for sure what's going to happen in that situation. The Niners, if they want to, could run it back with Jimmy G, Purdy, and Lance, because I don't know if they got the answer on Trey Lance yet. And Purdy was very impressive for the guy who was the last overall pick. I think he did a great job. Unfortunately, got hurt in the NFC Championship game. We didn't get quite a chance to see how he would stack up against the Eagles, although it didn't start off pretty there. So that's going to be interesting. It's a name to consider for sure. Jimmy Garoppolo is definitely a name you have to consider if you're a team like the New York Jets.
Sure.
All right, guess we'll start going off here with the alternative football here. Let's start with the USFL because don't know if you know this, like while we had Anthony on, it looks like they're putting in the broadcastings on the Fox Sports Network actually now. So that's actually quite surprised they're not announcing that now because it looks like right now, just a reminder, Mike covers the New Jersey Generals, and it looks like first game will be on Fox and right now, and that's about it for week 1. So we do know that it looks like they're going with all national broadcast week 1, unlike, of course, there was a few on USA, there was a few on Fox, and then we got those few on the Peacock exclusive that at first had that Little Caesars, everyone in that little room commercial played multiple times for one game. So we'll see how that goes. Like, what did you think of the schedule that got rolled out today for the USFL?
Yeah, well, today I wrote my general schedule article at USFLnewshub.com, and in it, I reached out to the USFL because when they sent out the schedule, they didn't put where the games would air in terms of broadcast. But as I wrote my article today, I fully expect those first 2 games that they have Saturday, April 15th, to be on major network television, and they have two different options here with the USFL. It's a good benefit. They got NBC and Fox. Obviously, Fox primetime Stallions Generals rematch from last year. They did very good viewership for that opening game last year. That simulcast where they did it on two networks at once, which was interesting, unique, different, something that hadn't been done since the early days of the Super Bowl. So, it's difficult with the USFL because I'm a long time as you guys know, advocate of non-NFL leagues. And my love and my interest in these leagues started with the original USFL. And I was a huge New Jersey Generals fan as a kid, Herschel Walker guy, Doug Flutie, etc. So the USFL is what started my interest in these leagues. And obviously so many Hall of Famers played in that league, the Steve Youngs and everyone else, etc., Reggie White. So it's hard to get completely excited. I'm excited about the league. I'm so happy it exists. It's amazing right now that we're going to have 2 spring pro football leagues employing 16 teams, so many players, 800 players, right, playing professional football. They're going to get opportunities. I think this is great. It's like football heaven, especially for someone like me who's an advocate for the concept. But, a little bit of my enthusiasm, it's been like this since last year, is tempered because I don't think you're a fully functioning fully fledged pro football league unless all your teams are in their markets. And while the USFL in year 2 is moving to 3 markets, there are 4 different hubs. One's a neutral site with Canton, Ohio, hosting the Maulers and the Generals. And then the 3 others, hey, that's great. Memphis is in the league. Goodbye, Tampa Bay Bandits. I don't think anybody in Tampa is going to miss them. They didn't play there. So Memphis being at home, that's great. And then the Panthers playing at Ford Field, I think that's really cool. And then Stallions did a good job, the best job of any team in the league. They played, obviously, at home last year. Everybody played in Birmingham. So part of me, until the Generals are actually in their market, until the Stars are in their market, you see a lot of quirky things in the schedule, like the Stars. Maulers don't play a home game, technically home game in Canton until like week 7. Same thing with the Generals. They don't play a home game. They play in Canton. They don't play until week 4. The schedule is backloaded with Canton games the last 4 weeks. It's very off, the entire setup. Until these teams are all in their markets, it's awesome that they've gotten year 2. That's something that one of these leagues haven't done in the past. It's been a while anyway. There have been some leagues like the United Football League and others that had multiple seasons. But, NFL Europe, people conveniently forget about that one. They've been around for a while. But anyhow, I'm enthusiastic about season 2. I'm looking forward to the games, and I'm happy for the players. This is great. They have options, and I think it'll be an improved product because they've got more home stadiums. But until they're fully in the markets, until like the Generals and the Stars and the Gamblers, whomever, are actually playing in their markets, it's hard for me to get excited about the black and gold Pittsburgh Maulers when they're not playing. I understand the tip in the hat to Pittsburgh, but you got to go there. And these teams are not exactly going into their markets to promote these. When I released the market ratings for all the USFL teams at USFL News Hub, did the top 10 on Fox, top 10 on NBC, and I wasn't surprised by the fact that a lot of these teams in Philly and New Jersey, they weren't watching. Nobody was watching. Nobody cared in these markets. They weren't even ranked in the top 10. So you have it, and that's a shame because those are awesome markets. The tri-state area, Philadelphia, all that. So, the St. Louis Battlehawks, would they mean something if they're playing in Phoenix? Yeah, a little bit, but a lot less than them actually playing in St. Louis. It means something. So, what purpose would it have done, St. Louis getting a pro football team in the XFL if they didn't play in St. Louis? So that's my biggest gripe with the USFL. It has nothing to do with the players, coaches, nothing but respect. I'm happy, like I said, for all these people that are getting opportunities to shine and play pro football. It's awesome. A huge Cavante Turpin fan. It was great watching him become a Pro Bowler in the NFL. But until the USFL gets into that mode, I temper my enthusiasm a little bit about the league. I'm happy that it's still existing and it's moving forward, and these are baby steps. But I didn't think the needle was moved very much with today's schedule announcement. I didn't see a lot of growth or interest. In our universe, we pay attention to all these things, all these alt leagues and what they do. But I have a keen eye on the mainstream and seeing the casual fan if they have any interest in. when you look at the comments section, I know that's pretty dangerous. A lot of times they're like, okay, big deal, star schedule. Yeah, but wow, you guys are on playing Philly. So that's like the number one knock. People mock it. And I understand. I can't say that I disagree with some of that sentiment.
Yeah, and of course, within our community, of course, I know there's a few, I guess we can call noticeable accounts on either league. Of course, I know you had conversations with him. We know that someone that's assigned for the Canton Hub, of course, we know as Ducky, but unfortunately, so he's kind of an interesting person, in my opinion. The one thing, though, that
I don't even. Who was that? Dickie?
he
What's the
calls
person's
himself
name?
Ducky. I know that you had some conversation with him on Twitter. Sometimes he's kind of like a troll and like a USFL stand.
Yeah. You know what? I gotta say this. Like, there's a lot of communities out there, like Discords and Reddits, and maybe it's me because I'm old school. I don't really pay too much attention to them. I know XFL Reddit, they've done a good job. CFL Reddit, all these, any communities that have fans that are passionate about these leagues, I love, because a lot of times these leagues get ignored. So if they're passionate fans about the USFL, XFL, CFL, the more the merrier. But the trolling stuff, the silliness, being like a community leader in a community that has like 45 yahoos, that's not really that impressive. That's not something to tip your hat to. So having like 100 followers. So, but I would say, I support anybody who supports these leagues. I support because they're on my team. Because these leagues get ignored. Because I watch how the mainstream treats these leagues and these entities. They treat them like they don't exist, like they don't count. So these players and coaches deserve justice. But sometimes you're gonna have a few people that that kind of like make these leagues look bad. So I don't read the Discords and the Reddits and all that.
Yeah.
So I'm not paying attention to Dickies, Duckies, Deckies, or whoever's out there. But I'll say that your actions don't actually shine a positive light on you.
I know.
So if that's how you're conducting yourself, so it is what it is.
I know. I agree with you because I know there's XFL stand accounts, and I'm like, guys, can we just get along? We want them both to succeed because remember, for us here in St. Louis, there's a lot of disdain when it comes to the NFL, and we're glad with the Battlehawks. And like you said, if the Battlehawks were playing in Arizona, that would have been a little bit more thing because remember, the Cardinals moved to Arizona. So that
oh my God.
Would have been some
time. That would have been extra painful. I just threw out Arizona out there, but I could have said Bronx, New York,
or to be fair,
New Mexico,
here's the thing,
whatever.
To be fair,
and I agree.
And to be fair, I agree with this because former football Cardinal offensive lineman Hall of Famer Dan Dierdorf said that he agreed that St. Louis, the government messed up with the Cardinals moving, but not on the Rams. That's a whole different ball of wax when it comes to that, of course. Speaking with like the deal with today with the Battlehawks locally, of course, we know yesterday Ryan Willis was not announced the starter, and then he got released, and that, of course, is the second quarterback going through this, the first core being Brian Scott with Vegas. And you said you had an idea who the third guy is or heard about it?
Well, I can't.
Just don't say the name. Just saying that they are looking for one. Let me just say that.
Yeah, they already have someone lined up. I will say this. They already, because it's off the record, but I will say they already have someone lined up.
Oh, good.
So it's good. The thing of it all is, though, the third person that's coming in, because last week I reported at XFLNewsHub.com that the league was going to expand their active roster to 51 to add a third quarterback so they can dress the third quarterback. Some people could call it the NFC Championship game effect after we saw. The Niners almost have to rely on an emergency quarterback situation with Kyle Juszczyk or Christian McCaffrey. So that's cool that the XFL is doing that. So even if St. Louis is bringing in, I'm sure, a talented player, I know a talented player, to be the third quarterback, from what I heard last week, Nick Tiano was outplaying Ryan Willis in camp.
Ooh.
And so that's the thing. You can't make assumptions with these leagues because I know some of these names we're familiar with. We're familiar with the Deambos and the Luis Perez's and the Kyle Sloters and all that. So you make assumptions, Ryan Willis. You make assumptions these players are going to be standouts and starters, but then camp starts and meetings start. And you got coaching. You got to earn your way. So, unfortunately, the situation with Ryan Willis, the Battlehawks, the people I've talked to, they said our two best quarterbacks are on the roster. So it is what it is in terms of Ryan Willis. some of these players assume that, easy street, I'll just walk in and start, but that's not how football works. And I would also say, but any players that end up being backups, asking for your release kind of shows that you're not really cut out to be a pro player, because you're also not thinking straight. Because here's what happens in football that's guaranteed is injuries.
Yeah.
So, and players struggle. So I've watched these leagues my whole life. I've seen Tommy Maddox overtake Scott Milanovic, and I've seen people assume. I remember Fox did an ad campaign with Connor Cook, assuming that he was going to be the superstar of the XFL. They're showing highlights from him in college and all that. And then what ended up happening? Lo and behold, PJ Walker is the MVP.
Yeah.
So you can't assume that just because you're not going to be the opening day starter that you won't eventually be the guy, because there are going to be quarterbacks that start week 1 in the XFL that don't pan out. We saw that in the USFL last year. Remember Ben Holmes? He was the top selection of the New Jersey Generals. He didn't even make the team. So and there were several quarterbacks like that, the Shea Pattersons of the world and others that ended up failing, flopping. So for guys like Ryan Willis, you got to question whether or not that's a smart decision. Of bailing, but from what I heard, it wasn't looking too good for him in camp. So I guess when he got word that he wasn't going to be a factor in terms of starting either 1 or 2, he's like, let me get out of here. So, I mean, that's the player's prerogative and choice, but there's sometimes a sense of entitlement, which really shouldn't come from guys who are borderline fringe players in the pro game.
And this probably, I don't know, do you think the USFL side might look at them if they act like this, or do they we might just take a look at it and see what happens?
I could see him landing with a USFL team, but again, you can't assume that you're going to be automatically starting even if you join a USFL team. I know we might see a couple of names out there, Davis Cheeks and all that, and these are young rookies who are in NFL camps, NFL practice squads, and we might think, maybe they won't start. Akil Glass, who I'm also a fan of. So there are some, you can sign on with the USFL team, but there's no guarantee that you're going to start. I think Willis will get a shot, but I don't see any direct, maybe, I know USFL's lost a lot of quarterbacks, so I don't see any direct openings there, but maybe Memphis, maybe Michigan seems likely. The Maulers could use a quarterback, so maybe it's possible that Ryan Willis could try, since he failed to win over his coaching staff in the XFL in St. Louis. Maybe he can join a different situation and hope to sneak on as the starter. And Willis showed enough, in the spring league, playing in the air raid offense, Hal Mummy's offense, that he has capabilities to be a starter for sure. It just depends on the competition and how he performs.
Yeah, and speaking with quarterback competition, I did see, of course, what is the quarterback competition right now with the DC Defenders? Because I did see, it looks like they're on, at least social media-wise, we don't know what we're seeing behind the scenes. They're kind of showing, Jordan Tomu and Eric Dungy might be the top 2, but what have you, assessed with your assessment and heard or anything on that side?
Well, they love, and I love it too, to be honest with you, but they love their quarterback. And I'm sure XFL teams around the league, we might get some trades, are going to be calling about De'Aaron King, and I don't blame them if they do. Maybe Orlando, who knows? But they really love their quarterback room. They love the versatility of it. And there was a conference call, I want to say a couple weeks ago, where the directors of player personnel voted for the expansion to the roster. Now, there were some hopes maybe they would expand it a little bit further, but the main emphasis of the call and the vote was to add 1 player to the 50-man roster so that they can have a third quarterback. And I know the DC Defenders, they love their quarterback room. They have 3 mobile quarterbacks that all fit into Fred Keise's offensive scheme, which is going to be very run-oriented with RPO concepts to spread. So you got 3 quarterbacks there. Jordan Teamu, who's mobile, who did a lot of that RPO stuff in the XFL with St. Louis. Then you've got De'Aaron King, who's a dynamic player, has very similar Kyler Murray traits, both from the state of Texas. King broke a lot of Murray's records in high school. So that he's a talented guy, smaller player. There's some durability issues there, but dynamic runner. Dungy is kind of like a Taysom Hill guy. You got and NFL tried him out as a tight end. The New York Giants did, that is. So, and I saw the highlights of Teamu throwing passes to Eric Dungy. And in a league where there's a double forward pass, where you dress 3 quarterbacks, it would not shock me at all to see Dungy, King, and Teamu used on a weekly basis. Teamu as the more traditional pocket passing starter, but Dungy, since he has experienced at tight end. King, who actually started out as a college receiver at Houston. I could see all three of the guys on the field at the same time, and definitely in red zone packages, short yardage packages. So DC's got a very intriguing and talented quarterback room, and I think they're going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, that definitely with the other teams within the North between, of course, with how the mascots go, Battlehawks with the sword and DC with the shield. That's the obvious kind of rivalry right there. Then,
Love it.
like, what do you think out of the whole North Division? Like DC, like for what you're saying, it's going to be good. What do you think about besides not St. Louis, but what about the Sea Dragons and the Vipers?
Well, the thing I really like about the Sea Dragons is they look at their coaching staff. I mean, specifically June Jones, right? So we've seen the success that June Jones has had in alternate leagues. We saw obviously what he did with the Roughnecks. The Dragons have beautiful synergy because they have Randy Mueller, who's their director of player personnel, the NFL Executive of the Year. Head coach is Jim Haslett, who's NFL Head Coach of the Year. They work together with the Saints. And Haslett has had success in alternative leagues. He was in the United Football League with the Florida Tuskers, and they were undefeated. So, and then you got June Jones, who worked with Randy Mueller in XFL 2020 at Houston. So Mueller drafted a lot of players for Jones in conjunction with him that fit his run and shoot offensive attack. So, you got Ron Zook on that staff. They have some very good assistant coaches that were part of XFL 2020 and that have experience with Haslett and Jones. So I think the Dragons have a stable quarterback room. I really like what I've heard and seen from Ben DiNucci, and I think he has an opportunity to excel in that offense. And you benefit playing in a June Jones offense. I like Steven Montez's talent. I would not surprise me if another XFL team picks up the phone and calls about him. He has the physical tools. He's been in the NFL the last 3 seasons. He finished the year with the Detroit Lions. Montez has good size, mobility. So either one of those guys can start in week 1, and they can eat in that offense. As far as the Vegas Vipers go, that's an intriguing team. You got Rod Woodson, you got Chris Dishman, who came over from the New Jersey Generals last year. They had a great defense. I think those two guys there, you're guaranteed to have good defensive back play. I like their quarterback room. Hard not to trust, like, or root for Luis Perez. He always beats the odds in these things. And then, of course, Brett Hundley. That was a big pickup. He reminds me a lot. I'm writing an article right now. I'm working on an article, tweaking it here and there, fantasy football rankings by position in the XFL. And Brett Hundley, in some ways, reminds me a lot of Josh Johnson. Seasoned pro veteran, a lot of experience, traveling backup. He just finished the year with the Baltimore Ravens on their practice squad. They were eliminated from the playoffs. He became a free agent. The XFL had been in talks with Hundley for a while. I can see Hundley having a Josh Johnson like, which ironically enough, Joey Clinkscales is the de facto general manager for the Vegas Vipers. He had Josh Johnson with the Los Angeles Wildcats. So I can see, and Luis Perez is there as well. So I think they have some stability there. I like their veteran receivers. I like Jeff Badette. I hope he stays healthy, 4.2 speed. I expected a breakout from him with the Renegades. He's had injury issues. He's been on and off NFL rosters the last few years. I'm hoping he gets an opportunity to stay healthy. Everyone knows about the notorious Martavis Bryant. We'll see what he has up in the tank. People will watch the games just to see how he does. They have Saeed Blacknall and other receivers there. I like Matthew Sexton, who's a star in the spring league. I think he's a very good returner. Could be an excellent slot guy. So I think Vegas has a lot of talent. Vic Beasley is another notable name that people are paying attention to. Let's see if he can be one of the top sack artists in the league. So Vegas is going to have a fun team. They look cool. I love their uniforms. I love the fangs on the helmets. I love the snakeskin detail there. I think it's a better look for this version of the Vipers than the Tampa one.
Yeah, Tampa did have both teams last year, unfortunately, with these leagues.
Right.
Now, just go back to the USFL because we know with the whole union vote that they had, and then the Generals you're covering, they were signing players, and all of a sudden, some of the signees they just made, and automatically they just released them like that. Then it comes out that, though it was not announced publicly, they voted on for a team training camp limit of 68 players. Was there some confusion within the front office of the Generals or something, or was that just something that they just didn't realize until now? I'm just curious.
Okay, so here's where I could get in trouble because I have a theory, right? So, like in the off season, when the USFL season ended in 2022, the reports and what I heard was that teams were allowed to expand their off season rosters to 70, 75 players. And that's what quite a few USFL teams did. And this is the theory. I think that the rosters were expanded in the offseason for two reasons. Number one, because they knew that there were going to be departures. And we saw that there's over 60 USFL players that jumped ship to the XFL. And they also, I think it was a preemptive strike to sign up young players and to prevent them from going to the XFL. So the collective bargaining agreement, as I've written about at USFLnewshub.com, the recent generals articles, it basically what it states in the new CBA is that training camp rosters have to have 58 players. Last year, there was only 45 training camp players, and USFL mistakenly started their season with only like a 35-player active roster, whatever it was in that neighborhood, which was ridiculous. There were games where teams only dressed one quarterback. I remember the Stars with Maurice Alexander, so emergency quarterback taking reps during the week. He does have experience as a quarterback, but teams had to be very creative and stretch the soup in the USFL. So having 58 this year in training camp is much better than 45 last year. They're also clearing out room because there's been talk of, and I don't know necessarily how this is going to work, some sort of supplemental draft, which will be obviously smaller in scale than last year's, league building draft, which you drafted 70, 80, 90 players from scratch, or at least in their case, 45. So I think that, any type of draft that they have now, I'm not sure what they're going to include. Are you going to do college players? Are you going to do, free agents that are out there? Are you getting down to 58 and then cutting more so you can create room for more players to come in? So it's unfortunate with players losing jobs, but like I said, I can't remember an instance, and I'm not including the CFL in this mix, where just America-wise, where you've had spring pro football with 800 jobs. Over 800 jobs available in the USFL and the XFL combined with 16 different pro teams. I think that's pretty awesome. But the numbers game is the numbers game still. So there's going to be a lot of guys that are getting released now and are going to be released down the road. And we're seeing that in the XFL now too. They got to trim down their rosters because eventually, we got cut down day coming up, I guess officially on the 10th. The players are being informed that they're being released now. The XFL team's going to get down to 51. USFL teams get down to 50, but they have the XFL has a 46-player active roster, and the USFL, unless they change it, has a 40-player active roster and a 10-player inactive list. So there's going to be a lot of maneuvering. Maybe some XFL players that are released in this process that don't end up back in the league because injuries do happen. Maybe they go off to the USFL. It's good for these players to have those options and to choose. Like a Channing Stribling decided, you know what, Battlehawk seems like a good spot, but I want to go back and play with the Stars. I enjoyed it there. So you got a few of those. So that's a good thing for players to have those options.
Yeah, of course, and Channing Stribling is kind of happy too, since he's playing the same state where he played for Michigan, and for the Hubs, so that's actually good for him. So there's some good and positive with some of the Hubs, in my opinion. The one thing that I'm kind of like you said with the draft, because they haven't announced publicly when the draft is, though I've seen rumors like it's going to be like close to the end of February. I'm kind of curious just to see they have this team has this many spots. How many rounds is this draft going to be? Of course, that's also be the question for next year after the XFL season, how that's going to work. It's because since we haven't had this in a while for spring leagues, how is the draft going to work now this year? Because remember, because of that one game at the end between Pittsburgh and Michigan, they made such a big deal of having that first pick to the winner instead of having, this actually technically was actually the real Tank Bowl of football. Right. So, what do you think of how that's going to be coming to effectiveness of this?
For me, I'm excited when players get an opportunity, period. But, for me, if you're going to do a draft, whether it be a supplemental, it'd be nice if they make a big deal out of it. If they're just – I'm not trying to be disrespectful to any players out there, but if they're just signing, the regular names that we see USFL teams sign every week, there have been good players who have been signed, a lot of under-the-radar guys that some people don't know. But it'd be fun if the Panthers had the first pick in the draft and they actually had, I hate to say it this way, some more notable players in there. I wrote an article at USFLnewshub.com where I suggested, basically, it was almost like a letter to Josh Rosen that he should play in the USFL. And so it would be cool if like the Panthers first pick, and maybe they put this on FS1 or something, where they do like a 5 rounds, 10 rounds, where the Panthers are the first pick in their draft, take Josh Rosen, or somebody like that. Because if they do a draft and there's some players that we know, or maybe some guys who are on the fringe who were cut by XFL teams or who were cut last year by the USFL and didn't make it, and they cycle back in somehow, that's cool. But I don't really know what the pool of players is going to be. Like maybe some Canadian free agents, CFL guys. I don't know if there's going to be that many notable guys. Like, for example, we had a very good signing by the USFL there with Reuben Foster. That's a fun pickup, right? Mm-hmm. So you'd like to see those kind of names in a draft process rather than, like, again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to some players that a lot of people are not familiar with that kind of like bounce back and forth, been released. Like Devin Ross was recently released by the San Antonio Brahmas. He might end up back in the USFL. So maybe, that's a nice player, good receiver. I like him. I'm a fan. But, like, it would be a lot better if you had some sort of draft where you had some notable players that people aren't expecting, like a Tavon Austin, somebody like that, taken by the Generals. That would be cool. So we'll see how they handle the process. I can't imagine it being that elaborate. And I've been told last year, I was told in the summer that it wasn't going to be elaborate. And if you already have a mandate of 58 players in camp, I mean, how much room do you actually have? More guys are going to get cut just to make room for draft picks. So we'll see.
Yeah, and of course now we're getting close to week 1, and I did notice that some people were going a big spike in all the markets though for week 1, especially. I know, if I recall, there was one Twitter account, I think the Comeback Period, that they were strictly tracking the Vegas since they finally got their season tickets. And I think that doesn't the single game tickets come finally for sale for that stadium next week, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, we're talking about the 13th, right?
Yeah.
So, a lot of this stuff, I'm not, again, the XFL's kind of late to the party with a lot of this stuff. I think we kind of assume that they turned the lights back on and that it'll just be like XFL 2020 was. But this is an entirely different ownership and management team. And they're really, even though they're returning names, they're starting from scratch. So, it's nice to see that ticket sales are picking up. I know some markets you're going to see a lot of walk-up business. I remember the last go-around with DC. They averaged 16,000 fans per game. They had amazing crowds. We all know about the beer snake. A lot of their business was walk-ups. Now, it looks like from the charts, it's hard to tell sometimes, but it could be anywhere from 10 to 12,000 tickets sold for their Sunday night opener, which Rock says he's going to be at. So we'll see how that goes. But against the Seattle Sea Dragons, which will air on ESPN, it looks like 10 to 12,000 tickets, which isn't bad. And if they have some walk-ups, they might actually reach that 16 threshold. I'm surprised. My expectations are not very high. In terms of, I don't expect. We know about St. Louis. St. Louis, it's a shame that they're starting up, not until week 4 or whatever it is. But as far as home games go, that's just the schedules with the dome and everything else. But I'm surprised that some of these teams are doing as well as they are. Like, to me, I'm looking at it from a different scale. I understand we're past COVID, kind of, right? So if that's helped for attendance, but these teams weren't actually in their markets, and they've gotten kind of a late start. So I like what I've seen from, these XFL people that have been working extra hard trying to connect with their communities, even though they've been in Arlington during all of camp since early January. And so, I think you have to temper your expectations. The big thing with, like, spring pro football leagues like this is, whether the crowd is 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, whatever it ends up being, you want to have dedicated fans that are into the games and not have a situation where I've seen this over the years, where you have these kind of leagues. They have some fans at the games, but they're casual fans that don't even care. So they just show up because it's cheap and what have you, and they're not really into it. And what I liked about the XFL in 2020 is Guardians games that I was at, all these games, the fans that were there, whether it was 15, 20,000, they were fully invested. The crowds in Seattle were lit. The crowds in DC were lit. We know about St. Louis. So, I mean, you want that kind of energy. So whoever shows up to these games, whether the Vegas has a smaller stadium, you hope that you get dedicated fans that are really into it and embrace the team, because it really takes time. It's going to take time for some of these teams to, like, they have no built-in history. The cool thing about St. Louis in 2020 is you had a market where they were out to prove and show up the NFL. So everybody came out to show that St. Louis is a great pro football city. this is a great football town, that we deserve a pro football team. So they were highly motivated. And so I don't know if you're getting that with some of these other markets. So that's hard to come by. That's magical stuff right there. So I can't wait till the Battlehawks have their games. I think it's going to be fun. That atmosphere is amazing.
Yeah, and of course you don't have access to it. I do with some of the fan groups on Facebook. There actually is a guy that actually counts how many tickets are left over for the home opener. As of right now, looks about between 12 to 1,300 right now. Though I'm getting a little bit PO'd at some of the resellers. Some of them are actually charging $300 to $500 a ticket on resale and Ticketmaster. I'm like, oh dear Lord, not this again. Because I know how people are trying to resell. Of course, overall resale on Ticketmaster is just ridiculous. So,
Right.
And
So how many tickets would that be? How many would as a projection for their opening game have they sold according to this individual? I have to look
well,
into it myself.
the lower bowl is somewhere between 28, I think 800 something, but to like 29 something. Because when we had over 30,000, we actually had those luxury boxes there. So, but we don't know how they're selling those. Those are probably for specific clientele, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty good. It's just that I don't think, because we know with Amphibex, with Fill the Top, I don't think they're going to do that until the last 3 home games like they did similar in 2020 with the Los Angeles game, with that being the 3rd home game and how the schedule is. But we'll see. Things could change, of course. I think it also depends how the first degree St. Louis does, because remember we were 1-1, and then there was that big crowd. But it's still going to, I'm kind of wondering what will happen if they come out 0-3 when they face the Renegades at week 4. But we'll see how it goes. But it's going to be interesting, of course, of all the markets that I'm kind of curious, because I know San Antonio got a bump. It's more like the ones I'm kind of worried are Orlando and Vegas, as you mentioned.
Right, and the thing with Vegas is they have such a small, unique stadium that if they have 5,000 or 6,000, that's going to look almost full. So it's not like God forbid if this was Allegiant, but it's not like they're in a 60,000 seat stadium, So if they have 6,000, 7,000, it might actually look halfway decent. Like, it's not going to look bad. If it was a 50, now we'll see what happens in Orlando. But if it was like a 50,000 or 60,000 plus seat stadium, then having only $5,000 is not a good look, right? So, like I said, it's also about the energy of the crowd. The crowd be hyped into it. How will the league dress it up? How will it be broadcast? I remember the Nighthawks in the United Football League. They played in a baseball stadium, and they had a very cool atmosphere there. They had Jeff Garcia and Mon Green and a few other notable NFL players, and they got off to a good start. Obviously, in the long run, things didn't work out for that league, but you can make that work. I think they're going to be a cool team. They're going to be fun to watch. So, and they don't have to really do too much to sell that sucker out. So, and it's good to hear that I'm not surprised St. Louis is doing well. I'm not surprised San Antonio is doing well. Those are 2 great cities. They've already proven themselves in this type of league. We saw that with the Battlehawks in 2020. We saw that with the original OG Commanders in San Antonio with the AAF. So, I expect, I don't expect attendance quite matching a few years ago, but it could. With the Battlehawks, I can see them doing that. But we'll see with the rest of these teams whether or not they can have presentable 10,000. Because, last year we watched the USFL where there were like 38 people in the stands when it wasn't the Stallions. So, crowds of 5,000, 7,000, it was great.
Yeah, one question I did ask Amphi earlier on here, because with the alternate leagues, XFL, Disney bought the rights. They advertise during any type of game, including the Pro Bowl games, which I'm shocked actually got 7 million viewers. That's more. That's about maybe about half more than I expected.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't watch it. I didn't watch a single second of the Pro Bowl, and I can't remember the last time I can actually say that. I didn't watch I love football. I did not watch it.
Yeah, honestly, unfortunately, the football all-star game is probably the worst out of all the pro leagues. Unfortunately, that's how the state is with that, of course. Though, one quick thing, it would be interesting if the Vipers get a little bit more of a uptick in Vegas, because how the Rays are, since they're going to be losing Derek Carr and probably Josh Jacobs here, so that's going to be quite interesting there. Like I said, XFL, Disney bought the rights. They advertise on all their games and stuff. Fox, we know they're going to be advertising on the Super Bowl, and they did with all the playoff games. NBC, they bought the rights for the USFL, and Josh, the last time we saw them on the play, did you see anything about the USFL?
Did not.
I'm perplexed. I even talked to some USFL guys, and they're basically like putting their hands up on the situation because since they bought it, I just don't know why they don't advertise it.
Yeah, and you would think that's such a huge benefit, like having two major networks like that, Fox and NBC. They can promote the holy hell out of it, right? And so, and I've seen some of the ads have been good, the subliminal digs at the XFL, all that. That's fun.
Yeah.
But the Hollywood League, we're not a Hollywood League or whatever. We're not a studio football or whatever. Anyhow, but but I would like to see NBC pump it. That's the great thing about Fox is, they have the freedom. It's their network. It's their league. That's an awesome thing about a network owning the league is that they can promote it as much as they want. They can fit it in wherever they want to. So you would like to see NBC join in on that. The ratings went down for the USFL, which happens to these leagues. They ended up averaging whatever it was, I guess close to 1 million on network television, a little bit over 1 million viewers per game on network television after having that big game in the beginning of the year, over 3 million or whatever it was. And then the cable ratings weren't that great, but comparatively speaking, because of the landscape, getting 200,000-300,000 viewers isn't that bad, I suppose. But if NBC were to promote this sport, they need it. The visibility. There are a lot of people, you see it in the comments and all that. A lot of people are like, "You're still around? Really? That thing's still going? What's going on? So what is this league again?" So you need to promote it more. The XFL needs to do that too with Disney. As they get closer, they need to make people more aware that the league is coming. I don't feel the same sense of anticipation for XFL 2023 that I did in XFL 2020. Now, maybe that'll change a week from now. I'm definitely excited about it myself. But in terms of roping in the mainstream and the casual fan, you get what you put in. So that's going to be interesting to see what the XFL does. And the USFL still has time. They still have a couple of months to go until they started their season. So you'd like to think that NBC would be a bigger factor in promoting.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, of course, that has been Mike Mitchell. Join us as always. Always a great guest. We love and appreciate the insight. Let the folks know where they can find you on social media, Mike.
What's that? I didn't catch that. I'm sorry.
Oh, let the folks listening and watching, let them know where they can find you on social media.
Oh, okay. I'm at by Mike Mitchell. That's BYMIKEMITCHELL. I write at XFLNewsHub.com, CFLNewsHub.com, USFLNewsHub.com, also at the Jet Press. Thank you guys for having me on. It's great that you guys also had Anthony on. I think you did. Anthony's terrific, doing a great job covering the Arlington Renegades. Shout out to Pat Rafano, who covers the Battlehawks for XFLNewsHub.com. He's one of the best in this space. More people need to check him out. He's at NFL QB Talk. So, got a great team. I appreciate all the outlets out there like yourself that shine a light on these leagues. I consider you guys part of the cool kids. So if you're out there repping these leagues, writing about them, talking about them, I appreciate it. They really need these leagues really need the attention because the mainstream ignores these leagues for the most part.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know. Even mainstream news media is kind of getting sloppy on some things.
Yeah. You would think that they give a little bit better press and better coverage to it, but you know what? I think we'll be pleasantly surprised by the end of this thing. XFL is probably going to force their hand a little bit. I would hope anyway.
Yeah, that's the part I'm curious about. I was curious about that back in 2020. Like how much would I hate to put it this way, but like the casual sports outlets, how much would they focus in on cover? These leagues have made it when the mainstream outlets start discussing like the football rather than, because a lot of times the news reports, the headlines are always about the ratings, always about the attendance, it's always about this is going up, this is going down. When the conversation becomes, can San Antonio's defense stop St. Louis's passing attack? Or, when those conversations start happening and the mainstream sports outlets focus in on the football aspects rather than look at the attendance, look at the ratings, look at this, look at that, will they make it to year 2? Will it do this? Hopefully that we get to a point in this space where the football aspects are focused in upon as far as mainstream attention for the XFL, you would think with The Rock and Danny Garcia and all those beautiful elements that are involved in this league in terms of the ownership, the leadership, that you would see some mainstream outlets cover the league. You got a female owner. You got The Rock, one of the most popular, Dwayne Johnson, one of the most popular stars out there on the planet. So we'll see how it goes with that. But you want to be able to rope in the mainstream football press, and you want them to treat the leagues as legitimate, not as dying entities, which is how they treat them. Like, okay, this league looks like it's going to flop. Ratings are down 300,000, whatever.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on. And also, we actually booked a few of your colleagues from News Hub. I already booked up Matt for the weeks in Seattle. We'll have you back week 3 with DC Defendant. And we'll also probably get Pat on here soon since he covers about. And he did.
I can't begin to tell you, like, there are a lot of guys out there like Pat that are doing tremendous work. But Pat is one of the very best in this space. He does his homework. He's so knowledgeable. So it's a great move having him on. And he's had communication this past week. He was on, conference calls with St. Louis personnel, Anthony Beck, and otherwise. So he'd be a great guest to speak to. So that's a great choice by you guys.
Yeah, we'll try to get contact. I know that someone in the colleague, Sam Shady, asked while we promoted this episode, like, when we're going to have Pat on. So
yeah, we'll definitely make that will happen.
We'll get him on. I had in contact with your Bromers reporter, Tristan. So we'll probably have him on maybe the week after because apparently he's doing something for his dad the next week. So then we'll be communicating with some other people that we know as well. So it's great to have you on. See you here week 3 and hoping the best for the first week of XFL football.
It's going to be fun. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me on.
Thanks, Mike.
See you, Mike.
All right. So that was Mike Mitchell joining us again. Always a great guest to have here on That's Football. Big note. Of course, if you haven't seen it on social media already, in the Zone Network, we're St. Louis partnering with Cafe Piazza once again for a tailgate and watch party here for the first Battlehawks game of the XFL 2023 season. Next Sunday, February 19th from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Again, that is Cafe Piazza, 1900 Arsenal Street, right on the other side of the highway from the Anheuser-Busch Brewery. Great pizza, great appetizers. You got the Ben Park Arcade there.
The fried calamari.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have specialty drinks. Everything that you can think of to make that football environment unique is definitely gonna be there. Also, major shout out to the World Bird Sanctuary because Call the Hawk will also be in attendance at that tailgate. So remember, hashtag Let Him Fly on all of the social media platforms, and also don't forget to visit the worldbirdsanctuary.org for further information about Carl, his kettle, as well as the other birds housed there at the World Bird Sanctuary, and also to make donations.
And also going to have a big tailgate thing once the season starts with Mohawks Landing there near at the Grace Baptist Church near the Dome, and that's going to be going great here once we get here to week 4. We're basically a month away from the Battlehawks home opener, and boy, we had a lot of news to, especially an alternative side tonight with our guests.
Yeah, crazy coverage and crazy stuff to go through, man. A lot to cover. We definitely appreciate Anthony and Mike for joining us here. Really quickly, before we wrap up, just wanted to give a couple more notes. One, before we kind of wrap up on the Super Bowl 57 note, a couple coaching changes here throughout the NFL. Some coordinator hirings. Brian Flores, former Miami Dolphins head coach, and was coach on the assistant coach on the coaching staff for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. He's been hired as the Minnesota Vikings' next defensive coordinator. Steve Wilks goes from interim head coach in Carolina for the Panthers to defensive coordinator for the 49ers. And Ejiro Evero goes from defensive coordinator for the Broncos to now defensive coordinator for the Panthers in Carolina under Frank Reich. So some shuffling amongst defensive coaching staffs there. And then, of course, as I mentioned, some notes here before we, give our predictions on Sunday before we wrap up. First matchup, Super Bowl 57, first matchup, of course, of black quarterbacks with Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. You also had the first matchup of brothers as opposing players with Travis and Jason Kelsey. We did have the Harbaugh brothers as opposing coaches, but first time for players. Also, note from the coaching side of things, you got Eagles assistant Katie Sowers becoming the first woman to coach in the Super Bowl this year, Super Bowl 57. And then, as far as the head coaches go, Andy Reid becomes the fifth coach to face a former franchise in the Super Bowl, joining John Gruden, Pete Carroll, Weeb Eubank, and Dan Reeves. And Nick Sirianni joins former Eagles coach Doug Peterson as Eagles coaches to coach the team into the Super Bowl in just their second season on the job.
Yeah, that's an interesting trend, of course. If I remember, because there was a head-to-head on Super Bowls, and I think it was like 1-2 for the Eagles and 2-7. I'm trying to remember all the Super Bowls that the Chiefs went to. I can't remember.
Well, I mean, of course, they've got the old time like Super Bowl I, Super Bowl II, that time frame. But of course, in recent history, suffered a pretty rough defeat at the hands of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here back in 2020, 31-9 in that game. Of course, Patrick Mahomes running for his life in that one. I'm sorry, 2021. And then, of course, 2020, they faced off against the San Francisco 49ers, winning that one, getting Patrick Mahomes his first Super Bowl title, and, of course, getting Andy Reid his first Super Bowl title as well.
I kind of wish that the Kelsey matchup was one's on offense and one's on defense, but unfortunately...
Would have made for a little bit more entertaining matchup.
It is more of a tight end versus a center, so...
I mean, you might see them line up against each other at some point. You never know. They might throw some trick plays out there.
Have the brother from Philly going in as a nose guard with one play and see what happens.
Yeah, just throw them out there. So...
so when it comes to the matchup... I have to think both with my brain and my heart here. Heart side, I want the Eagles to win.
Okay.
And mostly because, it's been 5 years since they lost since they won their last one. That seems like a good amount of time. KC, though, nothing against the players or the coaches. It's just that not all fans, but there's a certain amount of you in that fan base that is very so intolerable it's not even funny. And you know the ones I'm talking about. Yeah. They're the ones that taunt Nova. It doesn't even matter if they're winning or losing at Arrowhead. Made some of my friends' lives hell. Yeah. Then again, I did see, when I worked at Arrowhead, a few Chiefs fans run naked on the field at the end and get trampled or tased. So.
Yeah, that's not how you want to go out at the game. Man.
Yeah,
That's not how you want to go out.
They wear the weird easy pull-off clothing. It's like, you guys should have known that they were going to be streaking there after that.
Oh, yeah. I imagine somebody's probably going to try for the Super Bowl, too, but we'll see about that one. We'll see about that one. Now,
well, if they do it like the last guy that tried to actually have some type of weapon, good luck.
Right. Good luck on that one, man. Security's going to be in full force, and I'm sure you don't want to get your naked ass escorted out. So, for me, I'm going to take my emotions out of it. I'm honestly going to take a lot of strategy out of this. The Eagles have been NFL's best team pretty much from start to finish this year. A lot of people throw out the fact they had one of the easier schedules in the league. You still got to go out and play the games. They went out, they played them, and they won them. All of that said, Jalen Hurts has had a hell of a season. They got great team. I've learned my lesson, man. I can't pick against Patrick Mahomes. I picked against him in the AFC Championship game, thinking my man Joe Burrow was going to go out there and take it from him again. Didn't happen. They talked about the ankle injury. He was out there moving around the same way he was in previous games. At this point, Mahomes is basically like Jordan. Like, you just don't bet against him. Don't try it. Just wait, see how it plays out. If he happens to lose, okay, great. But I would rather be late to the party picking against him than being early and then being wrong. So
I understand your pick.
So for me, prediction, Kansas City 31, Philadelphia 27. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a lot of offense. At the end of the day, man, Patrick Mahomes he's a bad man.
And let's not forget there's another name. This is called the Reed Bowl.
Oh yeah, look, NFL. If y'all wanna market it, just let me know. The Andy Reid Bowl sponsored by Waffle House, baby. I'm throwing it out there. He got the Waffle House menu for the play sheet. We can go have us a nice meal after the game.
I think you should do Waffle House, Golden Corral, IHOP, and do all.
The Waffle House is necessary because there is a specific environment that the Waffle House breeds that is just very unique.
Oh, yeah.
To say the least, and be very PG
It
for the
is-
YouTube.
Well,
fans out there.
it's PG, it's R-rated. You can have fights break out in there. You can have some of their employees catch thrown chairs at them.
And I
all
mean,
that
you
stuff.
know,
So Waffle House is a perfect
I
place.
imagine whoever wins is going to be celebrating pretty late into the night. Waffle House is one of the few establishments, regardless of which city, state you're in, they're going to be guaranteed to be open. Just make it the Andy Reid Bowl sponsored by Waffle House. I'm pretty sure they'll love it.
Yeah, smothered, covered, peppered, and capped is
See,
the
look-
way I go.
See, somebody knows something. We'll know, man. We'll knows, baby. So, those are our Super Bowl 57 predictions. Been a great NFL season. I'm sure this Super Bowl is not going to disappoint. And then, of course, from here on out, man, we got some alternative football to look forward to this spring and early summer.
And most importantly, St. Louis is part of it.
Look,
That's number one.
I've already seen the signs by the Dome. Football is back. They're getting, the Battlehawks logo up around downtown St. Louis. So, of course, starting to pick up a little bit momentum here, man. So, of course, very exciting times in the football world across all levels. So, till next week, my man Will Freeman. This has been Josh Price. That's football.
Yes. Not live next week, but our next show, of course, will be on the Day of Love on Valentine's.
Yeah, we got a special treat in store for y'all for next week. But until then, man, In the Zone Network, My City, My Music Studios. Until next.